All right, folks, welcome again to our last LibraryNow drop-in of the fall semester. We're so thrilled that you've joined us thus far. The destination today, LibraryNow drop-in cool tool that we will be featuring is how to get animated this school year with Scratch. So we'll talk about Scratch, which is the largest online coding community for children. We'll talk about how you can create an educator account to then populate a class and assign projects, and how your students can also explore on their own the activity guides, interactive stories, and animation games that can spark creativity and collaboration. So first and foremost, before we dive into that, brief refresher always, welcome to the world of LibraryNow. LibraryNow is a free, easy-to-use website for both students and educators to access library digital resources that have academic and recreational benefits. So LibraryNow is really a twofer, as what we call both a digital access and equity initiative. It is a website, www.librarynow.org, that is a curated best hits list of resources, MPL digital resources specifically for the K-12 space. LibraryNow access starts in first grade and will follow your students through to graduation. And the second part of the LibraryNow streamlined resource model is the access piece in terms of how students log in. So if you are joining us from one of our LibraryNow partner schools or networks, automaticity was in mind when we created LibraryNow. So your students will utilize, if you're an NPS educator, their S number, their 6 or 7 digit S number, and their 4-digit birth year. If you're joining us from another network, let us know. We're happy to give you a refresher of your convention, but it is likely something similar to this, utilizing the student ID your students already know for the birth year. Without further ado, let's get back to Scratch. So as I mentioned, Scratch is actually the world's largest coding community designed specifically for young people, going all the way from kindergarten through college in terms of the scalability of the resources and games available to them. It's available in over 70 languages. So regardless of what your student's strongest language is, they will be able to find tutorials and resources available for them. And Scratch was really designed with these 3 kind of central tenets in mind: creativity, agency, and computing. Started out of MIT, but it is now designed, developed, and moderated by Scratch Foundation, a nonprofit organization. And their mission is really vested in helping students not just learn and associate computer science and computing related fields with the technical side, really helping students find their sense of imagination and creativity and make personal connections to computing, really bringing their interests to the table, because all the images you see here today are created by students. Agency is really integral in that, not just students viewing technology as something that they are a consumer of, but they are empowered to be designers and creators, and building out literacies surrounding computing being the last category. So drawing on computational concepts, practices, and perspectives, and a lot of the resources therein for you as educators as to how to do that pertain to what are kind of the computer science standards that you're able to meet if you're integrating this into the classroom. We like to let students speak for themselves whenever we can. So, oops, excuse me. We're going to exit for a moment and watch a video from Scratch themselves.
I was searching for interactive programming language on the internet, and I came across Scratch. As soon as I shared my first project, I got instant feedback, and I was like, okay, I want to continue with this. I remember my first project, super simple animation. I'm still actually really proud of my first project. It opened my eyes to the different possibilities that coding can present. So I've been drawing basically since preschool when I learned how to hold a crayon. I think making art with Scratch is different because I can collaborate with other people, make something interactive that other people can use. There was a song that said, "Happy, happy birthday." I put Scratch in there. It just became an instant hit on the site and inspired so many people to make their own songs and remixes.
Anyone can do anything with my project, and sometimes it's really funny how they change things at the end. It just goes to show like how much you can actually do with all the things you have in Scratch.
When you're looking at other people's projects, you're engaging on such a different level, which really encourages this kind of mindset of seeing yourself and each other as makers of things and not just consumers. I never thought that I could do like the coding part. Like I thought like that's the way to grown up and like hired someone to code it for me. But then I was like, hey, I can actually do this myself. It gets more complex. but once you know the basics, you can add on to your knowledge and move at your own pace.
If you like solving problems, if you like drawing, if you like making music, if you're into anything, Scratch is for you.
All right. I have to admit, by far, this has been one of the most fun drop-ins to prep for, because I myself, even as an adult, was able to get that, ooh, I can code sensation. And that's exactly what they're going for. So it's really going to be fun to show you how your students can take this and how you can explore it as well. So we'll talk about educator guides, creative computing curriculum guides. We'll also talk about student resources. I think that there is a huge potentiality for Scratch above and beyond even a traditional classroom teacher. You know, if you are a classroom teacher and you have that student that is always finishing early, you can certainly give them one of these activities, or you could have Scratch activities serve as brain breaks or plug and plays, or you could share Scratch resources with whoever coordinates your learning center or after school enrichment programming. You could create a Scratch club if that's something that your school is looking for. So really a lot of invitations to engage students both in your classroom, outside of your classroom, or if you have a student that has these emerging interests anyway, you can certainly point them in this direction. We like to do a good amount of showing and telling. So without further ado, I'm going to take us to LibraryNow itself, and then we'll dive into Scratch. So if this is your first time joining us in the world of LibraryNow, welcome. And we've got it grouped by kids, teens, and educators. And you can find Scratch on any of them, and this is where you land. So we're going to spend the majority of our time focusing on what you can do as an educator. I will let you know that I have already in advance created an educator account, but if this is your first time ever to Scratch, the interface will look just a little bit different. You will want to go to teacher account and request account. So they say that this could take upwards of 24 hours. For me, it took only, I think, 20 minutes to be approved in their system. It's also really worth stressing that the term educator, just as we were just talking about different utilizations of Scratch inside and outside of the classroom, educator is a big umbrella, we know that. So you do not, by no means have to be a traditional classroom teacher to have what they're calling a teacher account. You don't even have to have a, .edu account or something that is connected to your school network. Of course, better to utilize your professional email for this to compartmentalize your life. But for instance, I was able to use my Milwaukee.gov address to say that I worked for a library, to explain a little bit about how I plan to use Scratch, and I was in. So this is really critical if you plan to use or introduce Scratch to, say, a parent volunteer, a parent coordinator. Maybe you have someone from Boys and Girls Club that facilitates the after school club space. They can have access to this too, regardless of what their email convention is. And once again, if you plan to use the teacher account, keep in mind there's a little bit of a lag time, but likely it's not going to be 24 hours. So once you create your educator account, you'll get a little ping email from them that says that you've been successful in doing so. And then this is what you will see. The most important buttons are these three up here that I'll describe. First being the My Classes button. So I've already gone in and created a class, unsurprisingly called LibraryNow Drop-In, woohoo. I did so just by clicking a new class, and it'll prompt you to name it. So you can see settings, you could add a description of the class, what the class is working on. For instance, animating coding for movement. You can upload students, and I want to talk about the 3 different ways that you can do so. One is you can manually update a student. Really important, you'll see this language everywhere, that because Scratch, you could really see that in the video, Scratch is a community. Everything that you post will be visible to others. There's a real emphasis on not using your name or your student's name, not using any other identifying information, such as an S number or a school name or a zip code, anything like that. So just know that when you walk your students through the creation of an account. So you could either manually do it individually for each student. You could have students sign up via a link. Once again, they make you agree as the facilitator of the sign up process to caution your students against using their real names. You can get a link, boom, send that out to your class. And that's probably the easiest way to empower your students to create it. Though what has been very successful for LibraryNow users utilizing other resources is to consider setting a kind of username and password convention for the entire class. And that brings me to their last kind of format for sharing student login conventions. They share this Excel spreadsheet template in which it says the student name, password, and therein you would be able to say, create a custom username convention like browser 1, browser 2, browser 3, browser 4, and some kind of a password convention, like assign all students, maybe their birth year and their middle name, for instance, or whatever you wanted to set it to, so that you are then able to help your student remember in the case of if they forget their password, which certainly happens. So once you get your students up and running, you can see this example here too, you will be all set. Also wanted to point out this really handy dandy teacher account setup guide. I can open it right here so you can see what this looks like. This is really a thorough guide to any troubleshooting, any questions, FAQ questions that you have about creating a class and setting up a studio, for instance, how you troubleshoot student access. A few things to note: Scratch and your subsequent class, or what they call a studio, which is akin to a unit, cannot be connected to Google Classroom or Clever, unfortunately, so everything lives within Scratch. If you have other teachers, which we hope you will, other teachers or members of your school community from the faculty and staff side that are excited about Scratch and are working with the same students, you can both create an account. It's one teacher per account, but then the students cannot share the same login conventions. And that's because both you and your other teacher, for instance, using Scratch in a different class, will have kind of different prompted studios, different units, different videos. So you will both have to undergo the student username and password assignment. So that's something to keep in mind. But that teacher guide that I showed you is a really rich source of information as to those kind of typical FAQs, things that you may encounter. And as I mentioned, a studio is really going to be how you load content. So you can see in Unit 1, I have uploaded LibraryNow Flies, which is an animation project on how to animate a character to fly up and down, for instance. So you can create as many different studios as you want, as many different classes you want under that one educator account, which is awesome. You can share with your students via link. And then, of course, if they're added to your class, they'll get notifications. All right. I also want to show you educator resources where you can get started if you are thinking of using this as a brain break or building this into your curriculum. So hands down, the two most thorough conceptual big picture guides from a lesson planning perspective are the educator guides and creative computing. So if we click into educator guides here, you are able to see, scroll to the top here, every single activity, every single tutorial, but paired out with how to prep for the lesson, what digital resources are needed, what to print, what your students will ultimately create, how to share, more things to try. I love that they create this timing component. So you'll spend 10 minutes sparking ideas, 40 minutes working the room, helping students create, sharing out about their projects, creating that coding community in your classroom too. So this is an absolutely amazing resource. And one of these exists for every single activity that they have pinged, which we'll look at in just a moment too. Next up, creative computing gets even more granular in terms of curriculum building resources. So this was a collaboration between both Harvard and MIT, again, now facilitated by the foundation. But this is really, you can print this entire guide and see the foundational work of the curriculum. Once you get to the units, if you want to skip ahead, you could do these in chronological order or just pull from them. You can see in each the objective, again with that educator lens, and the standards alignment if you are utilizing this in conjunction with a computer science curriculum. You can preview, edit, download, and these exist above and beyond the activities that are much more ready to go, plug and play. How do you dive deeper? Hackathon, how do you facilitate that? And more. All righty. And now to get to the really fun stuff. It's all fun stuff. Just some of it is more big picture, and then we get to the tactile. Scratch tutorials, coding cards, and ideas are where the rubber really hits the road of what this has to offer. So you can see all of the activity guides here. I'll scroll down this page so you can see the full range. You can create characters, you can create a game, video sensing, animations that talk, recording a sound. So you can even integrate, your student's voice with their image in that way, which is really, really cool. So I'll show you what this looks like. Amazingly, every single activity has a tutorial that you can watch, a character that you can choose. This is my favorite part, getting to choose a sprite. You can see all the characters up here. You could find, for instance, a polar bear and then make that your character. You can add a backdrop. Let's add this polar bear to the basketball court. Awesome. You could add another character, for instance, basketball player or basketball. Jamal looks pretty groovy. And we can move them around. And I'll give you a quick snippet of what the tutorial looks like and how your students will be able to follow along this and do what they do.
With Scratch, you can make a character fly. It could be anyone flying, anywhere. Start by choosing a character to fly with. Next, let's pick something to fly past. It can be anything. I'll pick buildings. To make our character look like it's moving, we can move the scenery behind it. Let's use Change X to move the building across the screen. Let's try a negative number to make it look like it's going past it. Let's make it repeat. Perhaps 50 times.
All right, so this gives you a really good sense. If you could see Jamal moving over there, woo, here he comes back, he's sliding, of how your students can replicate, or they could choose not to use the tutorial at all and just explore across these, what they have to offer. They can upload their own backdrops, their own characters. They can really do so many cool things. All right, bye Jamal and Polar Bear. It was fun being with you. Navigating again to educator resources, where a lot of these activities reside, and coming down next to coding cards. So this could be a great printout plug and play opportunity. There are tons of one page, create a jump, make a character jump. And here's how you're gonna do so. And this is what it's gonna look like. And here's the code. So really empowering a student to grab one and try it on their own, to choose something that they're excited about. Just another way of presenting the same material. And last but not least, there are no shortage of video tutorials that exist, educator guides that you can ping from each of these. You can download all of the coding cards, Explorer starter projects, and more. All right. So navigating back to our presentation here, we wanted to close out our time together by sharing that we really hope that you're excited about Scratch, you're excited about doing this inside your classroom, outside of your classroom, and we really hope that you will continue to explore LibraryNow. There are so many more additional resources that you can utilize, whether it be our 2 digital collections, Overdrive Hoopla, language apps, movies, music, free online tutoring. So please do familiarize yourself with the rest of the world of LibraryNow, and we hope that you will be coding characters across the LibraryNow landscape. Feel free to use the LibraryNow homepage for that, as well as for your personal exploration. Without further ado, we're going to stop the recording, and we will certainly stick around if you have questions about Scratch, accessing LibraryNow, or other resources that we have to offer. Thank you.